If you are on a self-discovery journey, this podcast is for you. We will explore personal growth through storytelling, candid conversations, and practical strategies to help us navigate through life's challenges and rewards. This is your Access Has Been Granted podcast, the off season. Regulators! Oh my God, I have not said that in 3 years. It's about to be 4 years in March, which is insane. So I'm going to start out by saying hello. My name is Brittany Leary. If you're new here, I'm a life coach and the host of this here podcast. Your Access Has Been Granted. And yes, this is not season 2. Season 1 was originally recorded in March of 2021, and I am now returning back to the mic with new setup in this new environment. I know you can see we got cameras, we got mics, we got headphones, we got sound. And you'll see why that's so important when we start this episode. But again, my name is Brittany Leary. I'm the host of this podcast, and unfortunately, this is not season 2, but fortunately, I am here before you today. We are going to continue in something that I started in 2021 in the fall, and it's called the off season. So the off season symbolizes so many things for me. As an escape artist, I like to call myself an escape artist. During the off season, I usually escape from the world. I go and hide in my corner. I usually don't talk to anybody. I'm off of social media until spring, but something new has happened for me. And I want to share this process with you. The off season for me represents self-reflection. It represents me going through my life and kind of looking through the things that I've developed, the things that I'm going to keep for the next season, the things that I'm going to let go before the next season comes, and the things that I need to develop in order for me to get all of the new things that are going to come to me in the spring, in the new season. So I wanted to give you a physical or visual representation of what that looks like. And I figured, what was the best way to do that? I did a lot of thinking, and I came up with the idea that you and I would sit here together and self-reflect. And the best way to do that would be us revisiting those first 10 episodes in season 1 of the podcast, Your Access Has Been Granted. We're going to go through every episode, and we are going to do some live and in color self-reflection. You're going to see my face cringe quite a bit throughout this process because it is cringy for me. Again, it was 2021 and now it's 2024. I am a completely different person. I've gone through a lot. I've lost a lot. I've learned a lot. And when I had to go through these episodes to get it ready for production, I literally was cringing. So when you see me do all of that, it's not because I don't like what I hear per se. It's kind of like, maybe I don't like how I said it, or maybe I don't like that I even said it. But we're going to talk about it, and we're going to use this as a way to bridge the gap from 2021 to 2024 for the people who was with me in 2021, for them to get to know me now and who I've grown to be, and the people who didn't know me in 2021 and just getting introduced to me in 2024. You're going to be able to see how much I've grown since the first time I've done this, and be able to reflect with me and understand the process of self-reflection and how necessary it is when we're talking about personal development and becoming someone new or becoming the person that you want to be, which is a lot of what I do as a life coach. So I hope we made sense in that intro, and let's get into the first episode.
Regulators. We regulate any stealing of his property. We're damn good, too.
That's why I left
Any geek off the street. Gotta be handy with the steal, if you know what I mean. Earn your keep.
You're tuned in to Your Access Has Been Granted podcast. Join the regulators weekly to mount up on topics focusing on developing self while exploring hot topics, culture, and music. Here's your host, Brittany Leary.
Mount up.
Regulator. Your girl has entered the podcast land. And as nervous as I am so excited to be here today. Welcome to season 1, episode 1 of Your Access Has Been Granted podcast. This podcast was created to be a safe place to share my story and introduce tools and resources created and utilized by me throughout my self-discovery journey that I thought would be helpful for others, specifically in my community, specifically Black,
underserved communities, because I feel like we need to normalize mental health. We need to normalize having childhood trauma and wounds. We need to normalize assessing it and getting help. We need to normalize healing and moving forward so that we can be our best self. Throughout life, we have our ups and downs. We go through things that are out of our control, especially as children. And I want to be specific about that because most of our wounds and most of our trauma happened in childhood and they were unresolved. So now we have this thick, and then when I say thick, I mean thick stigma on what mental health looks like in our community. We have a thick stigma on getting help for those mental health concerns and actually healing, because every generation before us has normalized being hurt, has normalized the trauma as it happened to me too. So I wanted to make sure I created a platform where we could all be safe to share our stories. And when I say trauma, it can range from anything from sexual abuse to having no food, having no shelter, having no lights, and going through parts of life where you didn't have a parent because they were going into jail or some other state or abandoned you for whatever reason. And those behaviors and those emotional responses stick with you and you carry them on into adulthood. And I want to normalize us healing from those spaces. So in today's episode, we're going to cover who I am, why I'm here, and what my purpose is for this podcast and Access Grntd Solutions. I hope that you will visit with me. But I really, really hope that you will subscribe and become a regulator. I'll be releasing episodes every Wednesday. Hopefully in the morning. I haven't really ironed that part out yet. We're going to see what you guys like, because I want you guys to tell me what looks better for you, what feels better for you. So as of right now, we're going to be releasing them every Wednesday morning. First season, 10 episodes. So before...
Listen. The cringe that I get listening to this, you guys are going to hear me talk about how cringy this is the whole time I'm reflecting. For one, I want to just explain to you how nervous I was making this episode. I believe that I recorded that intro. This was the final take, and no lie, it might have been the 11th time that I did it. My biggest struggle, I think, when I first did this podcast was trying to figure out how to present to the world. I was struggling with figuring out who was Brittany the podcaster. And that was a strange space for me because I was overthinking it. And when you're overthinking, you're usually thinking about what other people think. You're not really concerned about your own feelings and how you feel about what you're presenting to the world. And for that reason, it took me forever to get to this final take. And I remember at the time, my partner, he was like, you sound like you're reading when I did it before this take. He kept saying, you sound like you're reading. You don't sound like yourself. That was the feedback I got from multiple people. And at some point, I just said, forget it. I'm just going to say whatever comes to my mind. And that's what I did. But as I listened to it, it's so cringy now because Brittany, the life strategist, and we're going to get to that throughout this process too. In 2021, when I created this podcast, is not Brittany the life coach in 2024 now. I am a trained life coach. I went to University of Miami and I attended their professional coaching program for 11 months. And that was some of the most intense programming that I had been in because it reshaped everything I thought about coaching. And one of the biggest takeaways that I get from listening to that clip is that overstimulating feeling of talking about trauma and the therapeutic parts of healing when I talk about my community. And that's so important to me now because a big part of my messaging as a life coach is to separate what is coachable and what is therapeutic, because I am not a therapist. So even over speaking about the trauma of it all makes me cringe because a big part of my messaging now is that I am not a therapist. And if you come to me for life coaching and you have a therapeutic issue, I am going to refer you to a therapist because trauma and who you are now and who you were before is a therapist's job. And it's a big part of why I chose to be a life coach, because that part of the job burned me out. That part of the job drained me versus gave me energy and recharged me when I worked with clients. So I am going to be clear about my messaging. My vision is a lot more clear now. And I am going to be intentional about separating what's coachable and what's therapeutic throughout this new process, because that is very important to me and for my community to understand, because therapy is very important. And this is a collaborative effort when it comes to therapy and life coaching for me. I want us to be able to work together in order to get people to their end goals a little bit more expedited, if that makes sense. I want to optimize the space and the time and be able to get people where they want to go just a little faster than if they were doing it on their own. So a lot of what you're going to see from me moving forward, even throughout this self-reflection process of looking at these old episodes and listening to these old episodes, is you're going to see me be a little bit more raw and authentic to myself. I'm not overthinking what you guys think of me. I am here to present myself as myself. So I'm gonna mess up. I'm gonna stumble on words. You're gonna see me processing my thoughts sometimes right in front of you, and that's just who I am. And I'm not going to sugarcoat that. I'm not gonna hide that, because I know that someone else will relate to that. So I just had to get that out of the way. I'm going to cringe this whole episode. Let's go.
As I stated, I'm a life strategist for Access Granted, a company that I created that focuses on personal development, coaching, specifically on self-awareness, authenticity, and productivity. All of my approaches are client-centered and goal-oriented. And for the most part, my passion is making complex concepts simple and relatable so that we can all grow together. Because I feel like sometimes, for one, how mental health is marketed, it's marketed to our counterparts, our Caucasian counterparts, and we feel like we're left out in marketing. We can't talk to our family, so we feel like we're left out and alone with our hurt, with our pain. And I wanted to be a non-biased accountability partner for people. I wanted to be able to give them tools and resources to use. I wanted to be able to refer them to proper therapists also throughout their process if it's needed, because a lot of times behavioral changes will do the trick. It's not always necessary for us to go run and get on psychotropic medications. It's not even necessary sometimes for us to pay a therapist every visit $100, especially if it's not effective. So I want to be able to be that resource for you so that we can figure out if you need therapy or if you just need to tighten up and do some changing. Or if you do need therapy, I want to help you get to the right therapist. I want to be able to connect you with Black therapists who come from our background, who know what you need because they know what you experience. Because sometimes we go to therapy and we go pick the 5-star therapist, but we don't know who made them reviews, and we get in therapy and we feel like we're alone. We still just as alone as we were when we got there. So I want to make sure that I can connect the dots for you guys.
Let's stop right there, Ty. Yes, a lot of that is still true. A lot of that still feels true. But there has been some significant changes in the community as it is pertaining to Black therapy. Marketing has changed so much since 2021 in my perspective. I see a lot more of our Black therapists creating platforms and databases to let other Black people know we're here for you for relatability. But also in the same breath, I have worked with many different cultures, many different ethnicities over the years, and I found so many passionate professionals, whether they be coaches, therapists, psychiatrists, who are focused on making sure that we all have access to reliable treatment, reliable resources. And one thing that I will say as a coach that I have also recognized as I work through the last few years with different clients, with large groups, with small groups, is that a lot of therapy doesn't work because people are not going to therapy and being honest. So I wanted to add that in here. It's just not about the professional. It's about you too. A lot of y'all go to therapy and you hide the truth. You only tell what you want to tell, and then you blame the therapist for things that they can't help you develop or they can't pull out of you. A lot of people go into therapy with this idea that I'm only going to say what I want to say. I'm not going to dig deep. If you're not going to dig deep, don't go to therapy. because it is necessary for you to give the therapist the information that they need so that they can actually give you the tools and resources that you need. So it's a partnership no matter what. Coaching is more of a partnership in the aspects of there's no hierarchy. There's no space where I am giving you curriculum or anything that you must do. But when you go into therapy, you have to at least commit to being honest, completely like surrender to the process, because if you don't surrender to the process, it is going to be harder than it needs to be. It's not going to be effective. So I do want to add that I was so gun-ho listening to myself. I sound like a freedom rider. But outside of that, at the time, I think I really wanted to create a directory for African American professionals for us to have a resource, but that never happened. But what I can say is I've seen so many be developed over the last few years, and I've been a part of so many different communities. So if you do need resources or you are looking for some of those databases and platforms, DM me on Instagram, and I'll make sure that at some point we put all of my Instagram information, my social media information, and all my contact information within the video so that we could connect past these videos, and I could get you guys some resources and information if you need them. We could start again. Current thing of this podcast will always be progress and process. My cousin KJ passed away in 2019, and trust the process was a personal mantra that we both adopted around like 2011 when he lost his mom, my aunt, my favorite aunt, Gloria Leary, rest in peace, my darling. When we lost my auntie, KJ was the youngest. He has 2 other siblings, Keith and Keisha. And it was really hard for us as a family. And I feel like me and KJ stuck together just because me and KJ were closer at that time. And he was actually in Palm Beach after so long. So I was here with him, and we went through a lot of emotional times together. And trust the process was our mantra because we needed to trust the process. It wasn't an option for us anymore. We had to buckle down and figure out how to surrender to life and all of the things that came with life. And KJ passed away in 2019. So from 2011 to 2019, he lived by that mantra. He mentored children and worked for Faith Place, which is one of our local community organizations here in West Palm Beach, in our underserved community specifically. Toot toot. Very quality program, by the way. He ingrained that in his children, and his children trusted the process throughout their percussion journey. And since he has passed away, Ms. Noble and Mrs. Mays has done an amazing job with branding Trust the Process for the percussion program at Faith Place. And for that, I am forever grateful. I think they know that I'm grateful. I know they think that I know that they know I love them. But to see it every time I am around Faith Place, it makes my heart smile because that is a legacy that KJ was able to leave here. And it's listening to that. First of all, I call Mrs. Mays Miss Noble and Mrs. Mays. That's the same person. It's just I always hear these crazy nuances, and I'm like, what are you talking about? I felt like I was rambling a lot. But just to reiterate, a lot of the courage that I got back in 2021 to even get on the mic and share my perspective with others was losing my cousin at the time. He was 26 years old. He was very close to me. If you don't know my background, I'm the oldest of 6 grandchildren. The oldest granddaughter, the oldest niece, and KJ was the youngest. So at my age, growing up, and him being the baby, he was the baby. So he was my baby. He was the baby that I was old enough to like take care of, help with. So we always had a special connection. And when he passed away, it was very hard for me. It was the first time that I felt the type of grief that I experienced during his passing. And when I was able to like grab myself out of that, I had this fire in me that said that you don't know when your time is going to come. And at some point, you have to stop escaping the world. And at some point, you have to do what you know and feel you're called to do. I have the power of influence. I have the power of influence just in my immediate circle. My energy determines what goes on around me. And I understood that then, but I understand it even more now. And at the time, it was just so heavy on me that you don't know when your time is going to come. And if KJ was 26 and was able to take direction and listen to his intuition and stay home and help Miss Mays and Faith Place create that program for our inner city youth, not knowing that at 26 he would pass away and leave them there to continue. I had to take some kind of initiative in creating something that I could leave behind and create some kind of legacy for myself. Because if I leave, I want you guys to be able to say she did something. I don't want it to be, oh, I knew her. I want it to be she did something. A lot of my mantras and the things that I live by were created through life experiences, and most of them was hardships. And a big mantra that I use in Access Granted is where passion meets impact. And it's one thing to be passionate and it's one thing to have a purpose, but it's a whole nother experience when you can take that and create something that creates impact in your community. And when I say community, I don't even just mean the inner city community as enriching as it needs to be. I mean anybody who comes in contact with me. I need to be able to impact anyone and anything that comes in contact with me because I have the ability to do so. And I can't hide from that. So a lot of creating this platform was me understanding that I have to create impact. I have to create impact. And I just kept telling myself that I have to create impact. So even right now on the mic, I don't know where this is going. I never knew where it was going. I never knew that it wouldn't go consistently until 2024 at the time. But here I am, and I'm doing it again because that fire that was in me in 2021, it never died down. But I also needed to take time for myself and learn who I was at my core and love myself as I am in order to do this again. So I just wanted to reiterate that Faith Place is amazing. I just went there last night. Now my niece is a part of that program, and she's a little drummer in that same program that KJ created, the percussion, the drum line. And I cry every time I'm there because they will never let his legacy die. Last night they did a performance that was created in 2 days. They had developed and created that performance in 2 days. And even in that small fall preview that they did last night, they still did his cadence and they still said King Keith. They will represent him until that program. I'm not going to say until it's gone, but they will represent him forever. And I am so proud of him beyond life that he was able to create something that was so sustainable that even though he's not here, it's still here. And I'm glad that he taught me that valuable lesson. And I'm glad that trust the process was one of our mantras because it has taken me beyond heights that I ever imagined. And it has, I'm just thinking about the hard times that I had to go through and how trusting the process was that one thing that I held on to get through it. So everything is still about trusting the process over here. Everything is still about progress. Everything is still about processing and healing so that we can make progress, because staying stuck is just not an option. And if you're going to stay over here and be a regulator, you're going to have to regulate your emotions. You're going to have to figure out how to put that to work and move forward. And that's just what we do. That's why I call you guys the regulators, because we get in action and we mount up.
Think when he passed away that I needed to leave my legacy too.
Oh, I just
And trust me, I work with many people. I've been a counselor for 13 years. I've had hundreds of clients over the last 13 years. And not only that, I have a diverse group of friends that have businesses, that are professionals, that I've helped get to the next level over and over again through all the ebbs and flow of life. So I understand more than anybody else what that growth and healing process looks like and how hard it can be. So I am here to start living out my truth and preparing my legacy because I want something here when I leave. That's
Hold on,
the
time.
honest.
The change in audio is driving me nuts. I'm not talking about that in a negative way, but now the perfectionist in me the investment of being in a studio where sound can be consistent, where lighting can be consistent, where I can actually have a visual aspect to it was very important, because even then it, it aggravated me so bad. But I did what I had to do. You understand what I'm saying? Because at that point it had to happen. I was sitting in my car with a mic because I read online that was the best way to get the least amount of sound in the background. I was sitting in my car with my mic recording these episodes, and every time I messed up, I was re-recording it and starting over. I just had to laugh at myself really quickly. And also, I mentioned that I had a very big, diverse group of friends, and I had helped and counseled hundreds of people at the time. And that is still true. I am 15 years in now. And I just want to say, 2021, Brittany talking about her friend group and what they had accomplished. Wait till you see them now. At some point, all of them will revisit these conversations that we had on this podcast. But just in reflection, I'm thinking about who they were in 2021 and who they are now. And we've been doing our thing. I just want to give them a little clap, a little pat on the back, because y'all been doing y'all big one. And these things are still true. So I am glad that although some things have changed, some things are still the same.
I am going to put my all in empowering, edifying, and inspiring my underserved Black community to normalize healing, because healing is going to lead us to success. Whatever you feel is successful or whatever looks successful to you, I want to help you get there, because I learned this from my meditation the other day, and I'm not going to take it like it's mine. But Deepak said, fulfillment is when you become who you want to be. So everything that I do with Access Grntd Solution is assessing who you are, helping you figure out who you are, so that you can figure out what steps you need to take to get to that person that you want to be. Because until you're that person, nothing is going to feel good. So my goal is to connect with like-minded individuals, like-minded therapists, business owners, professionals, community activists, and leaders to expand the knowledge of what the path to success looks like, to increase our knowledge of self-awareness so that we can understand what's holding us back, and to also romanticize fulfillment and the variety of what fulfillment looks like. I want to make sure that we have resources that we can trust, and I want to introduce you to things that you may not be aware of. So,
listen, like I just said, there are a lot of things that have changed, but there are a lot of things that still have stayed the same. And although I might not say them the same way, because I'm very conscious of how words have power, and I'm very conscious of the separation of, I almost said the separation of church and state. So ridiculous. The separation that I want to be clear in my messaging about life coaching and therapy. I won't say things the exact same way, but the core of the message is still the same. At the end of the day, healing isn't linear, and it's going to look different for every person. And that's going to be the purpose of me bringing different people in so that we can get different perspectives all the time. It won't just be my perspective. The conversations that we have won't only be my perspective. The perspective of others is so important. So that's why I try to have guests as much as possible, because I want you to get it from multiple people and multiple sources. But the core of the message is still the same. There is a lot of forward movement in healing. And as a coach, all I'm worried about is the self-discovery process, who you are now and who you want to be. And when we can figure out who you want to be, the work in the middle is what we focus on. And a lot of that work has to do with you breaking old agreements and creating new ones so that you can give yourself the grace, the time, the courage to move forward and become that person that you want to be. And all of that is still true. It all rings true. A lot of what I just said about the podcast is still true. I'm happy and cringing at the same time. Oh my God. I think the next segment is us going through like question and answer. So it's going to be a little bit more personal, a little bit more fun. So let's get into the next section. Hey, regulators, I know you're listening and you're like, why did it stop right there? That is part 1 of this episode. Please make sure that you are following me on all platforms so you know when the next episode is going to be released. And also make sure you comment, like, subscribe. I want to hear from you. I want to know what you're thinking when you're listening to these episodes, and I want to know what you want from me in the future. So make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so that you know when part 2 is dropping.